Hello, my name is Kirk. I'm currently the Director of Strategic Projects at the University of Canterbury. I have been in the university system for 25 plus years, starting as an academic, but evolving into senior management roles. I recently retired from the role of Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Lincoln University. And during that time, in retrospect, I think I would probably be described as an entrepreneur during that course of time, and I've tended to be quite passionate about new developments that I've been particularly wishing to see happen, and they are primarily around trying to encourage innovation, entrepreneurship, the use of the knowledge engine of universities in benefiting the country, benefiting people, and especially trying to find the sort of ecosystem or the infrastructure that promotes that type of activity. I started at Waikato University and was heavily involved there in the development of a degree called the BSc Tech, which is a 4-year degree, 1 year of which is in work placement. And I directed that degree and expanded it to a fairly large proportion of our science students who came in, took that degree, and we had to find all the placements for the students. But it wasn't just work experience, these were educational papers that counted for credit and had to be assessed, and one of the great experiences was to deal with a lot of outside industry, what they were looking for in students, to see students mature during that time as they developed experience for their, in my case, their science. I'm a chemistry person by background, but we did it across the full School of Science and Technology and Engineering. And so I got heavily involved in that interaction with industry on behalf of the school, and then found that one of the things the students needed to have was some idea of management or management systems, so that when they went to the workplace they were not naive about such things. So that caused us to begin to introduce some management courses for our science students. I did originally approach the School of Management with regard to their offerings, and there were certainly some good papers available for students to pick. But in the end, we also decided to invent our own Management for Science and Technology students course or courses, and we modularised the things that we believed were most important for the students that we were having at our undergraduate level. We then introduced a master's degree and again put some novel aspects into it. And during my latter years at Waikato, we established a TMI unit, a Technology Management Institute, which was crossing the boundary between science, technology and engineering on the one hand and management on the other. And we particularly tried to put on courses for industry as much as for internal candidates. And I went from Waikato University to Massey University, having gotten onto the treadmill, if you like, of becoming more a manager than a lecturer and researcher, and I took on the role of inaugural director of research services at Massey, which involved the research and commercialisation aspects of Massey University, which is the second largest in New Zealand. So that was really quite a step into the world of trying to commercialise intellectual property as well as run the research contractual business of the organisation, and that was a fantastic learning curve as well. Subsequent to that, I had a year in the Ministry of Research, Science and Technology on secondment, and then the role of Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Lincoln University. And again, the innovation and research and related matters came under me directly. This time, of course, I was less hands-on. I was more managing and trying to get success through others, and trying to instigate systems that I believed would improve our performance in that area. Now I'm at Canterbury University and have a number of strategic projects, again in the same space, to do with innovation, entrepreneurship, new opportunities, and external relationships in those regards, and am seeking to develop them. I've been passionate about things in the infrastructure such as incubators and science parks, innovation parks. I established 3 incubators in the early 2000s when I was at Massey, one in Auckland, one at Palmerston North and one in Wellington, where we had campuses. I've been on the board of 3 of these technology incubators in New Zealand. There are 8 that currently get New Zealand NZTE funding. I co-wrote the initial feasibility study for the Waikato Innovation Park, which was 1996, got going in 2001 or 2, and is now quite a good success story. So I'm passionate about that sort of infrastructure that can help the knowledge engines of the universities connect to the exploitation of that knowledge, in the best sense of the word, and to innovation systems in general for our people, for our and our country in general, the wealth thereof. One of the things as you go up the scale of management is that you need to work out how to work with both internal and external people, and you do need to learn how to get your success through other people as opposed to doing the projects yourself. That said, I need to admit that I really enjoy managing projects myself where I have a passion for what we are trying to achieve. And I think that's about the power of an idea. If the idea really is a new idea, I like new ideas, if the new idea grabs you and you want to see it happen, then in an institution like a university, you've got to work at getting it through the established systems of the institution to make it happen. But the excitement of the idea tends to drive me forward. I like to try and bring innovative ideas forward to produce new sorts of results. And despite the fact that I gradually learned how to manage through other people, I must admit I still have a real passion for hands-on management of particular projects, and my current role does, thankfully, give me another opportunity to do that. So it's a little bit, I believe, about who you are in your DNA and what actually drives you forward and where you get that particular buzz. If you take what's generally called the traditional entrepreneur who has a bright idea and wants to make it traditionally into a company and go forward and be very successful. They're driven by passion about their belief in the idea and their determination to make it happen and their accountability for making it happen and for the use of others who work with them, their time or their money or whatever. I think equally with an entrepreneur, you've got to be just as passionate about an idea. You've got to work within the bounds of an organisation. But there are some positives about that. Although large organisations tend to have quite a lot of inertia and a whole lot of systems that you have to work within, they do have resources. They do have resources in a way that often entrepreneurs don't have. So entrepreneurship is another form of creating wealth, but doing it from within an institution or within an organisation and finding a way to get your ideas going forward, to get around the roadblocks. All of this is the same stuff that entrepreneurs find in starting a new business. But the trajectory, the journey is much the same for an entrepreneur inside a large organisation, an entrepreneur. You still have to work your way to where you want to go and be passionate about it, be driven by it, and find your way forward through the potential or real roadblocks that exist. And it's my belief that of the students who tend to go to management or entrepreneurship courses, a number of them may well set up their own companies and be entrepreneurs in the traditional sense, and I champion that, and I think that's fantastic. And it's a very legitimate way going forward rather than necessarily becoming part of a larger organisation. But I think equally there can be a massive contribution made by our students when they leave, going into existing organisations, and within those being a voice for change where it's required, a voice for improvement. In other words, championing particular ideas that can add value, add wealth to the company and the cause of the organisation to which they belong. And these can equally, of course, be social as much as they can be commercial. And so I think the role of our students can be very entrepreneurial inside organisations for which they are employed. And there is quite a difference between the traditional management activities, which tend to be relatively systematic, very important that they're done correctly and done well, and many people are suited to those. A rather smaller proportion of people are suited, I think, to being good managers, but leaders in a new idea sense. And I believe that there's a real role for those in challenging our existing organisations and in seeking improvements and looking for the next opportunity. And I think it's incumbent upon organisations to allow those people the bit of space they need, to encourage them to be like that. So my message to students is often, by all means, become established and see where your career can go. But if in your heart you feel entrepreneurial, you just are attracted to the power of new ideas, don't lose that. See either how you can develop those ideas on your own, if you want to spin out and do that, or do it within an organisation. Learn enough about the organisation and how it works to figure out how you can take your ideas forward. And as many of you will have heard, some organisations take that pretty seriously, and they have bits of their organisations that they call skunk works, which is where they let groups of people periodically get together and take a new idea that can really challenge the organisation, and for a few weeks just be able to operate outside of the current rules of engagement of the organisation as a whole, because those rules are good to make it do today's business, but it's about as much as anything developing tomorrow's business. And skunk works are a technique that some organisations use. I've got to say not so many, so what you need to do in a typical organisation is work on your own or with a team or with your boss about developing up new ideas and making sure that you're the comfort zone of those to whom you report is okay about it. But then if you truly believe in it, put in the extra effort in the same way an entrepreneur does with their own individual company. Perhaps as one example of a moderately recent initiative that I was engaged with when I was Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Lincoln University was a combined approach with Canterbury University and the DVC at Canterbury. We put together a project that got special funding from the Ministry to develop the enterprise culture of the two universities, particularly in the science field. It was called a Growth and Innovation Pilot Initiative, and initially the proposal was thinking about asking for $100,000 to give some support to some initiatives we had thought of doing, but at the end of the day, I advocated we should go for $1 million each. And we did that, and we got the funding, and allowed us to put into our science faculties entrepreneurs in residence. It allowed us to run a series of seminars, out of which, in fact, courses have now developed at the University of Canterbury. It allowed us to provide a seed and kill budgets that we didn't have before for particular types of projects that related to innovative ideas linked to commercial opportunity, and a series of other things that we did over the 3-year period of the initiative. And one of the worries I always had is that when the funding finished, maybe some of the things that we started to get going may well have stopped. And at the end of the day, what you really want is for the culture of enterprise to remain or to increase, along with the academic culture. We were never trying to change the academic excellence of the institutions in any way, but we were trying to add another aspect to that for those individuals who have that entrepreneurial orientation, trying to find support systems and recognition systems for them. And there have been quite a few results that have come out of that. And one of the more recent ones that I'm working on now is the notion of setting up some very student-based, student-led initiatives to develop an entrepreneurial culture, to develop a hatchery for new ideas for students. And these are new in New Zealand, and I will strive to do them with a passion. One example of the sorts of areas that we happen to support through that project I mentioned of developing the enterprise culture was setting up a unit when I was at Lincoln that was supporting student ideas based around agricultural or ag bioscience type innovations, but were student-led. And we had the good fortune to have some good students working in a team that went forward with their idea to the National Field Days, and not only won the Young Inventor of the Year award for the team, but also won the Supreme Inventor of the Year award, which was really quite superb because they're up against large companies and their inventions, and I thought that was a fantastic outcome of partly at least the encouragement we were giving them through this enterprise project. But if I could switch to another type of example that entrepreneurial thinking can help with, it really is at much the other extreme, and it was about The organisation I was part of, Lincoln University, a relatively small but very good university in its specialist areas, and its future and opportunities for the future. And I was part of, led a part of thinking to what sort of organisation it could become. And just as an example of the sort of thinking, which in this case didn't work out in the result that I was going for, but it was whether or not a university such as Lincoln and a Crown Research Institute, quite a different organisation, in this case Ag Research. The proposal we put up and got it right through to a fair way down the track with government and others was the merger of those two organisations. Now, it broke all the rules. There were no processes for doing this sort of amalgamation, but it's an example of what needs to be tested to see if it could or couldn't be made to work, if it was or wasn't the right idea for the future of the organisations, for the future benefit of the country in this case, and the students, of course, and the staff that we would have been involved with. And the aim was to think about a land-based university like Lincoln having an enormous research engine on top of it, which was the offering that Ag Research would have brought to the table, and it would have been an extremely strongly research-led university organisation and excellent in its field, world-class by any standard. And that was the vision and the dream, and it was very worthwhile pursuing. We didn't get this one over the line as it happened, and one of the reasons for that is there would have been some costs involved, and it was put forward at the time that the global financial crisis hit the country, and at that stage things ended up needing to be put to one side. But it's just an example of the sorts of things you can try and do inside organisations to renew, to re-energise, to look forward to the structures that need to perhaps be there into the future. There are other options available, of course, and but that was one that was a little bit out there, at least in terms of university situations. One of the areas I would perhaps mention is the area of incubation, or incubators and accelerators. There are various terminologies that are used. Not overly important what the terms are, but what they're trying to do, I believe, is. And the idea of incubators is to nurture and grow young companies through that vulnerable early stage of growth. And the phrase I used to use and the ones that we set up were, we're trying to reverse the 80-20 failure rule for technology-based companies. And I think this is an area where the market tends to fail. And for businesses that already exist, there's quite a lot of business advice available, and companies can generally afford to purchase that. But for the start-up companies, they're in a different situation. Generally, there's no income, and it always bothered me that our startups that we were spinning out of universities needed to go through the same learning procedure themselves on their own, make all the same mistakes, trip over, and more than likely not go terribly well. The idea of an incubator is to co-locate like-minded companies for that vulnerable early stage of their existence, and to offer generic support systems inside the incubator, the manager, the expert advice, the networks, the stuff that makes it easier to get yourself going, to get your systems right, to get advice early on, to work out the right order in which things need to be done. And I was heavily involved with the government in setting up the incubation movement in New Zealand back in 2000 after a visit with the minister to Israel. We looked at what they were doing. And we came back and said, well, these have got to be technology-based or tech-savvy incubators. And in particular, we were looking for 20 spin-out companies per year in New Zealand from these incubators. You might have taken 100 companies to spin out 20, but we were looking for that sort of result. And it would be fair to say that the incubators that were subsequently set up with some support from government to help them with their operations, some were very good, some weren't so good initially and then became good. And there's a fairly stable set of incubators now up and down the countryside that are doing, by and large, a pretty good job, but they're doing it differently. But the mandate is the same: to grow, to nurture, to support early stage companies to become successful, to become income generating, to employ more people, grow technology-based exports, and so on. And I do think that's a valuable part of an infrastructure. It's fair to say in New Zealand that we haven't gone beyond the incubator type infrastructure very much to the more park type or precinct type infrastructure, but that could be the result of our size, essentially. Many other countries have got science precincts or parks, and it is about not adopting what other countries do, but trying to adapt and learn from them by all means, but adapt to our particular and absolutely unique characteristics of New Zealand and the sort of people we are, but the infrastructure in which we live, the distance from the market that we are. And we can still do hugely well, and I look forward to great anticipation to the technology-based businesses spinning out and being nurtured and being very successful.